Do you ever feel like the Christmas holiday season that goes from November into December is kind of like these gumballs that are falling on the table? And so your life is kind of going this way and that as the gumballs are going all over the table. But then finally as Christmas comes and you're able to unwrap the presents and spend time with the family, then things slow down a little bit. And as things do slow down a little bit, this week I want us to focus a little bit on the holiday season that's coming up next, that being the new year. Think about what we're going to do in the new year. As I was just talking about the Christmas holiday season and those gumballs that were going in all different directions, kind of like sometimes our plans go in all different directions, even times that we don't even understand that those plans are coming our way, and then all of a sudden they're dropping into our life and making our life go in different directions that we didn't plan on. Well, as we just celebrated that holiday season of Christmas, now I want us to turn our direction into the next holiday season, that being the first of the year or a New Year's celebration. Now, usually that also brings about a time of gathering with food and family. Maybe not so much this year with COVID, but the concept of still getting together and celebrating and ringing in the new year. But as we get into 2021, I want us to think about how we can be not having those gumballs go all over the table, that can be just a part of the previous season that we were just in. That we can kind of think about how we can be planning our life a little bit. Specifically, how we can be planning on getting more of God in our life in 2021. Now, I know there was a lot of people that talked about 2020 being able to see God clearly because of 2020 being a good vision number. And I'm sure nobody knew that what 2020 was going to bring about with all this COVID issues, and even though it did start a little bit in 2019, but we didn't know what it was going to really be like for us in 2020. And so, though that may carry over a little bit into 2021 as we are not gathering this weekend together, and even though some places are, but still people are dealing with COVID. And I know we have the vaccine now, and so that's a good thing in most cases. But as we think about 2021, how can we plan to get God more in our life, or Jesus or the Bible, whichever way you want to phrase that? We're going to be looking at Matthew chapter 13 today, looking at these first 8 verses. And I know most of you have heard this before, but we're going to be focusing on that as we focus on planning to get God in our life in 2021. So follow along with me. That same day, Jesus went out of the house and sat by the lake. Such large crowds were gathering around him, and he got into a boat and sat in it, while all the people stood on the shore. Then he told them many things in parables, saying, A farmer went out to sow his seed. As he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Some fell on rocky places, where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. But when the sun came out, the plants were scorched, and they withered because they had no root. Other seed fell among the thorns, which grew up and choked the plants. Still other seed fell on the good soil, where it produced a crop, 100, 60, and 30 times what it was sown. Now there are 4 different soils here that's represented in Jesus' parable. And he talks about these 4 soils representing the hearts of people. And so as we think about our heart, maybe how can we relate to this? Well, let's look in these different soils as we go through this. As he starts in verse 3, he says, A farmer went out to sow his seed. He was scattering his seed. In verse 4, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Now, sometimes when we go out and you put a seed along the path, it's going to be too hard to be able to take root. That seed has been packed down many, many times from people going on it or wheels going on it, whatever it was, to be able to pack it down. I remember as a young child looking out into a field where cows had been, or maybe going fishing near a pond, and it was in a pasture where cows had been, and being able to see the path that they had taken as they go around in their different ventures through their day. It was always interesting to see, these paths that they created. And obviously they were able to be seen because there was no grass on them. The grass had been, the grass seed was not able to penetrate on that path. And so as we go through life, sometimes we might encounter people's hearts that are hard like that do not want to have anything to do with Jesus. And so those are the hearts that are like the path. And then as we continue on, it says in verse 5, some fell on rocky places where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. But when the sun came up, the plants were scorched and they withered because they had no root. Sometimes whenever you do plant things, they're in that rocky soil, the root does not go very low. And so it cannot grow very well with certain plants. And so you have to have certain plants that are able to grow in rocky soil. If you've ever been in the eastern Kansas, specifically around the Emporia area, I grew up and was raised in that area for the first 8 years of my life. And those are called the Flint Hills because there's a lot of flint that is near the surface of the grass or of the soil. And so the grasses that are there have to be able to grow in that shallow soil. You cannot have something that grows deep, and you cannot really farm that. And so it's mostly a lot of cows and grazing that goes on in that area as the grasses are grown up naturally out there. And so some people's hearts are a little bit like that. It takes root very quickly, but then it gets scorched out because maybe a certain peer pressures or certain other pressures in life. And so they really, though they want to have God in their life, they really are not able to have it because they haven't allowed it to take root yet. And so let's keep going as we get into verse 7. It says, other seed fell among the thorns, which grew up and choked the plants. Weeds, not only are they able to look differently because they don't look like grass in most cases, sometimes they take the moisture out of the ground and it hogs it chokes the moisture away from the grass. And so the grass isn't able to grow as well, but the weeds are able to grow very well. And so as you have a yard, you don't want to have those weeds because you want to have that good, lush, green grass in your yard. And so as these weeds took place in people's hearts, then they may be choking out. It could be certain lifestyles that we get into that all of a sudden we were now alerted to the new way of life and informed about this Christianity, and we loved it initially, but then something came into our life and it took us away from that. It allowed us to be able to not follow what we should have been following, and then we turned from God. But then the last one is the most idealistic heart or soil, that being the good soil. It says, still other seed fell on good soil, where it produced a crop 100, 60, or 30 times what was sown. And so though there was seed scattered out there, this produced much more than that. When I was young, really young, then I gathered some wheat seed from a nearby spillage from a farmer, and I put it in an area near our house. And I had this little area that had a fence around it so no one or no animals would get to it. And I allowed it to grow and to spring up and see the wheat that would grow from that. It was pretty interesting to see how much wheat came from that head. And that was even without any kind of fertilizer. I don't remember exactly the numbers, but I would say, well over a dozen different wheat heads were on that wheat. So from one, it produced at least a dozen more. And as you go into thinking about this concept, as we have that fertile soil, that we may be able to produce much more than what was planted in us. So now let us look further into the chapter in looking in 18 through 23. It says, listen to what the parable of the sower means. When anyone hears the message about the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what was sown in his heart. This is the seed sown along the path. The one who has received the seed that fell on rocky places is the man who hears the word, at once receives it with joy. But since he has no root, he lasts only a short time. When trouble or persecution comes because of the word, he quickly falls away. And the one who received the seed that fell among the thorns is the man who hears the word, but the worries of this life and the deceitfulness of wealth choke it, making it unfruitful. But the one who received the seed that fell on the good soil is the man who hears the word and understands it. He produces a crop yielding 100, 60, or 30 times what was sown. And so as these represent the different soils in which we may encounter, that being like the path, the rocky soil, the weeded soil, or the weedy soil, and then of course the good soil. The path being that nothing really penetrates on that. It's hard for things to grow. And then here the birds of the air come and they take away that seed, or as he was saying, the evil one comes and snatches it away before it's able to even penetrate. Or even in the rocky soil, that it just comes and it takes a little bit of root, but then it quickly dies out because it cannot get to the wet soil underneath to be able to, it just stays on that rocky soil that's at the top and dries out quickly. And so when the sun comes out, it scorches it, causing it to be taken away. And then we also had the weedy soil, that the weeds come and they make sure that they take all the good parts of the soil to be able to make sure that the good soil or the good plant is choked out. But then, of course, we have that fertile soil. And that fertile soil is something that should be in all of us that want to follow Jesus. That we want to know more and more, that we have people that are planted after us, or that we are able to produce after us, to be able to have those 100, the 30, the 60, all those kinds of numbers that are there. Basically, that we are reproducing in our life in Christ. And so as we focus a little bit on 2021, I wonder what you're thinking about for your life as a Christian. What are you going to be doing in order to help reproduce your Christianity in someone else? How are you going to even help yourself grow a little bit in order to be prepared for you going out and to reproduce? Now, just like that tractor that has to be ready in order to plant, we also have to be ready to plant. We can't just be a tractor that's not working. We have to be able to get out and make sure that we have everything that we in ourselves to be prepared in order to go out into the fields to plant and to be able to look for those good soils. So what are you going to do for 2021? Well, I want us to think about possibly making sure that we are fed spiritually. And I need that because I get busy, kind of like those gumballs that were falling on the table. Not always is it just during the holiday season. Sometimes it's just through the week that is my week, that things are just coming in and going in all different directions. And so I need to, in order to allow God to be more in my life. If I'm going to be looking at the Bible regularly, it may not be every day, but regularly through the week. And so as the communications person or as the minister for you, then I'm going to send things out to you to be able to look in the Bible. I'm going to send them probably via a link. That way you can go to those links and be able to read a little bit of the Bible, maybe just a few verses here, a few verses there, but just to be able to get ourselves in the Word a little bit this year in 2021. Because I know that I need that, and I know that other people need that. If you're already having a plan, a reading plan maybe throughout the year, that is great. This doesn't have to be the only thing that you're doing. You can do something well on your own. But as we get into 2021, I want us to be prepared to scatter our seed, the seed of the gospel, to be able to get out and to be able to make sure that those seeds are being planted, and that if they're not planted, then they can't grow. And so we need to look for ways in which we can get them out there in the soils to allow them to grow. And so as you go throughout this coming year, may God bless you in being able to plant and get ready for the planting. It may not be on January 1st. You may not be ready to be planted or planting until, March 16th. But the idea that we need to be planting in 2021 in order to look for the harvest and to be able to plan for that harvest so that we can be able to go and take care of that harvest, kind of like the combine or maybe other farm implements do as we think about it from an agricultural setting. But let's first start about planning and planting in 2021. Plan to be able to kind of, not have those gumballs all over our table or all over our life, even though things may come into our life that we don't know are going to come in, but still they can maybe not be as many things going in all different directions. But specifically that we can kind of take care of ourselves and look to be planting in 2021. And so I'll be sending you out some different links that are short places of being able to read in the Bible and to get in the Word a little bit in 2021. So I appreciate all your interest today. Hope you have a great week. And we will look forward to seeing you at the next time. Hopefully it'll be in person soon. But God bless and have a great week.